Good morning, and thank you for joining today's webinar from Spec Innovations, Tackling Resolutions with Innoslate. My name is Taylor Duffy, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. First, I'd like to go over some housekeeping. During the presentation, feel free to send us questions, and we will get them answered in the Q&A part of the webinar. You can also interact with us on LinkedIn through the Innoslate users group or through Twitter using the handle @SpecInnovations. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available to you after the live presentation, so keep an eye out for it in your inbox. Now, I would like to introduce you to our presenter, Dr. Stephen Dam. In the spirit of the new year, the creator of Innoslate himself will walk you through starting fresh with Innoslate through migration, integration, organization, gap analysis, and more. He will also use his time to show off the new and improved Innoslate 4.7. Dr. Dam is the president and founder of Spec Innovations, as well as one of our NodeApp training instructors. He has been involved with research, experiments, operations analysis, software development, systems engineering, and training for more than 40 years. He has also received an Expert Systems Engineering Professional ESEP certification from INCOSE. He is currently applying systems engineering techniques to various DoD, DOE, and commercial projects. Feel free to send Dr. Dam any questions through the LinkedIn users group or send him an email to steven.dam@specinnovations.com. And now I'll hand over the controls to Dr. Dam and we'll get started.
Hey, thanks, Taylor. So the brief agenda today, and I think Taylor kind of went through it, which is we're going to talk about a little bit about migration from other tools to Innoslate, which we highly recommend, by the way. So, and then of course integration with other engineering tools, because we do want to do that. We realize that we don't do everything, and particularly in the design engineering space, there's a lot of information that you want to be able to capture and bring into Innoslate or work with it within Innoslate. Also organizing information in Innoslate. I'll give you some tips and tricks there. And then gap analysis. That always comes up as a question. How do you do gap analysis? There's just a lot of ways to use Innoslate to help you do that. And then last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about the new 4.7. That's coming out next week to the cloud. And then there'll be another 2 weeks after that before we have the enterprise release. So look for that coming up. You don't have to worry about importing and exporting. Our updates to the cloud are transparent. Okay, so migration from other tools to Innoslate. First of all, develop a migration strategy. Don't just decide, just try to do these things ad hoc. Come up with determine whether you should do it incrementally or you try and do it all at once. I always recommend incremental, because too often people try to do everything at once, and you spend a lot of time dealing with things because you didn't clean house first. And that's usually a problem, right? You just take in all the garbage data that's in the previous database and try to slam it into a new tool. That's usually bad practice. So bring it in incrementally or start incrementally. Even if you have a current project ongoing, just take a piece of that project that's new and put it in. And then migrate the different pieces as you go throughout, and you'll find it works very well. We're working on a very large project right now. They have a lot of things in spreadsheets. Over time, we're migrating the spreadsheets into Innoslate so they can see the same kind of information, mostly the way you see it in the, and you have to be adjusted maybe a little bit, but similar to what you see in the spreadsheet. But it lets you do so much more and make sure things keep consistent and complete. I think you'll find that it ultimately translating from a pure Microsoft Office systems engineering domain into a tool like Innoslate really lets you do all the things you were doing and much, much more. So first thing to get it into Innoslate, we have a number of different techniques for that. We have number of different importers. Particularly the CSV is maybe your best bet if you're trying to bring in a database of information. So particularly from other tools, CSV is sort of the least common denominator. The nice thing is, since we auto-generate all our diagrams from the data, if you take and capture the entities and their relationships between them, if those information content that you bring in, then it'll automatically generate the appropriate diagrams for you. So that's something that's a hidden benefit maybe that you may not realize when you do the CSV importer. If you have documents, we highly recommend using the docx import. That's usually the best. If you have a PDF or something like that, you can save the PDF. If you're a full version of Adobe Acrobat, you can save it as a Word file, and it actually will pick up things like the headers and stuff like that, set the headings properly, so that this automatic importer works very well then with docx. Another thing is, don't be afraid to redo diagrams by hand. One of the things we found is some of the tools let you mix and match, throw different types of information into a diagram. Now you have it's a very maybe interesting diagram from like a presentation standpoint, but from an information content for the diagram standpoint, it's not correct. And so you want to take a little time with it and work with those. I think you'll find that that's worth the time. We're doing that again on another large project where one group is doing this in Cameo. And so we're taking and just redoing them in Innoslate. And it's actually quicker than trying to move the data because we find all kinds of problems in the diagrams. They have the ability to do things like go-tos. Go-tos were gotten rid of in Fortran 77. That was in 1977. So that was considered bad practice then. It's bad practice today too. So anyway, so that's something to think about as you're doing this migration. Again, this redoing the diagram gives you an opportunity to better understand that diagram and really have it express what you're trying to make it express. You got to remember, we're doing modeling not for modeling's sake. We're doing modeling to help us understand the information better and communicate it better. And so that's the purpose of the modeling. Integration with other systems engineering, other engineering tools. And so again, we feel like we do the program management systems engineering layer pretty completely. So we look at a variety of different built-in integrations we have with some other tools. And so we have a CAD viewer for the CAD diagrams. We have GitHub for software. So you can you make GitHub your software repository. We are looking at how to do that with Jira and some other tools as well, GitLab. But those right now, this is the one we have built in directly. We also do have MATLAB and co-simulation with our simulator. So you can use math functions you created in MATLAB and use them as your functional elements instead of rewriting the script in JavaScript, which you could do easily as well, by the way, in Innoslate. So you could replace that over time if that's what you want to do. Again, but as a migration strategy, a lot of people do a lot of work in MATLAB, and MATLAB has the benefit of doing very good code generation. So again, there's another way you can get to code generation if you want to, using MATLAB functions. Another one we've had a lot of good success with is STK. Again, that's set up to co-simulate with our discrete event simulator, and so you can use that to help you do your geospatial analysis at the same time. By the way, both MATLAB and STK, I believe, do not work with the Monte Carlo simulation. So that's something that you have to deal with separately if you're going to try to do Monte Carlo. And we can talk to you about how to do that. Now, we have found that most design engineering tools probably shouldn't be directly integrated at the systems level. Very often what you're doing with the design engineering level, you're making very large trade studies, and you can set up the trade studies in something like Innoslate and specify what trade studies you want done. But then take the results of those trade studies. Those may take hours to days of, if not months, of actual design engineering tool analysis before you come up with the final result you want to put at the systems level. And so use that, and then use Innoslate to curate that information and put that into the database as an artifact, so you can have the actual original files and structure. You can even use Test Center to capture the different iterations of the of doing those trade studies as well. So there's a lot of ways to capture that information in Innoslate and not lose it. Too often what happens is it's sitting on your project drive or the equivalent, or buried in SharePoint somewhere and you can't find things, you don't see how it's connected together. This lets you bring all that information together in one place. So another thing is, if you do have other tools you want to integrate with, we do have REST and Java APIs you can integrate. Again, using if you have the enterprise version of our tool, you can even use the JavaScript APIs as well to do other things, maybe creating your own tools even built on Innoslate. We've done that with Sapatra, essentially is built on Innoslate. So you can do that with and create your own tool as you go through. The nice thing about using our APIs is we use those same APIs because we use a modular open systems architecture approach architecture, so that most architecture. So that allows us to do a much better job of being open and interoperate with other tools. So again, this is something go directly the integrations as appropriate. Again, if you need help with that kind of thing, we do run training courses on that, and we're glad to help you get started with it. So organizing information in Innoslate, lots of things, in any database tool, there's going to be things, there's only so much you want the tool to do for you, because if the tool does things just one way, that's not necessarily the way you want to do them. So you need to recognize that you're going to have to sit down and think about, how am I going to organize the information? So one of the things we suggest is start with a data storage plan. Now, the data storage plan contains schema usage, extensions you make, things like adding labels and things like that, or maybe you add new classes and relationships. You want to document that. You want to make sure everybody understands how it's being used. Numbering schemes is another thing we see a lot of. Come up with, how am I going to number the IOs? How am I going to number the functions? How am I going to actions? How am I going to number the assets? Those things are fundamental things you have to do and want to do up front. And it's something, again, that grows over time. It's not something that's you can do it all up front. You won't be able to think of all the things you need to do, and just keep it up to date as you go. Now, again, that data storage plan can be set up as a document in Innoslate, and you can do it all right there if you like. Dashboard. So dashboards can really help users access the key information about the project. We have many different widgets that are available. The example to the right, I'll show you a little bit more detail when we go to the live demonstration. This is Dr. Jerry Seller's NanoMet project, and he's working on building an actual satellite system to be used in I think it's for educational purposes, but also they may launch it. So he's been working with the Air Force Academy and some other organizations to do those kinds of things. But if you can see what he's done here, he's got the NanoMet project itself has a kind of cute little thing in there, but he's got different viewpoints from his lifecycle modeling framework. And so the solution viewpoint, the execution viewpoint, a DevOps viewpoint, an opportunity viewpoint, and technical baselines and reviews over on the right. And so if you click on like the technical baseline review, it'll take you to that template and start you going through the process of doing that review. And so you can put key diagrams in here. You can do other things to let people have quick ways to get to whatever they're interested in. So use that dashboard, and you can do so much with it. Another thing you can do in conjunction is a workflow. So we do have built-in workflow, and you can set up that for any enumerated attribute. So if I have a status attribute for my test cases, for example, I can track that and see where I am in the process, how many tests have been completed, or where are they in that process. Baseline documents is another thing that's available with it. The baseline is one of the options that are available in Documents View, and you can create multiple baselines. You now can rename the baselines if you need to, or delete baselines if you want to get rid of them. But that's a great way to keep configuration management and organize the information and track what you're doing and adjustments that way. Similarly, in Test Center, we have the idea of test cycles. And so that same kind of idea is baselining. The difference in test cycles is it'll actually go through and erase the results column. So you now can start over and add in the results, the actual results, not the expected result. That one stays. Anyway, so another thing is use saved queries in database view. That's a great way to organize things in tabular kind of forms, easy to find. I track a number of tables like a risk register. You can set up your risk register there in database view. I use that all the time for that kind of purpose. Okay, so that's again quick about organizing information. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions, so I'll leave that to question time and show you some of the demo part as we go through. Gap analysis using the spider diagram and traceability matrix. So the spider diagram shows you all the related information of an object. Okay, so when a change occurs, you can quickly identify potential impacted related elements. You can see that right away, and you should look at everything that's connected to that thing that changed. And so that's it seems like a sort of manual process, but it is. So you have to sit down and look at each one of them and make sure nothing bad happened or nothing unusual happened. Another way to do it is use the traceability matrix. And the traceability matrix only lets you see one relationship at a time. It's between two things. And so now I can see the two things on each axis. And then I can see which specific relationship. So for this example, we're using the verifies relationship. So I'm showing my at the top is my verification requirements, and I'm tracing them to my test cases using the verifies relationship. And then I have a traceability assist, which is a natural language processing algorithm that'll read the name, number, and description field and see if those two should connect to each other. So again, these are an aid for you to help see it, where you might have problems, might have holes, for example. You see a lot of red in this particular one. It says there are a lot of holes. I probably need to look at it and say, do I really want to make that a test case? Does that test case really relate to that requirement or not? The darker the red, the less likely, and it may very well be that just there's not enough information to connect them together in the description of the test case, which is the case in most of these here. Again, the very darker green is an indicator of good correlation between the test case and the requirement. So you know those probably go together. So again, these can be little aids to help you with your traceability and working with that. And so that's kind of that sort of thing. And so, well, if there'll probably be questions about these, and I can show some of these things live as well. But let's really get into something I think a lot of you are very, very interested in, which is version 4.7. It's always the next version. What's the next version going to bring me? Okay. Well, we have a major documents view update. We've enabled what's called infinite scrolling. So now what that means is instead of going paging it, which is like what we did before, it will scroll and it'll work to what you need, and it'll let you build very, very large documents now. We've tested this to, I forget what the level, but it was hundreds of thousands of entities in this documents view. So you really now can have very, very large documents with it. We have a new compilation view. And the purpose of compilation view is it compiles information from other classes, not just the statements and requirements that are in documents view. But now if I put a lot of information in actions, or I've got a lot of characteristics I'm tying together with things, and I want to bring them together into a document-like form, that's what compilation view does for you. So this is something that a lot of people have requested. We said, yep, but we have to create a new view for that, because documents view is really meant for the documentation element of LML, which is statements and requirements contained in an artifact. So that's why the separate thing. Because we use the same framework for these two, tests and Test Center, Test Center was updated as well. So there's some significant updates there. Timeline diagram. I can't tell you how excited I am about this one. The timeline diagrams has a major update, and I think you'll like what you'll see. And then one of the other ones is, of course, our SysML diagrams update. So we were preparing for SysML 2.0. We were hoping to actually have SysML 2.0 in here, but it keeps changing. It's changing. It keeps changing a lot, actually. They have monthly releases of version 2. And so we've been trying to keep up with all those, and it's just, we want to let it settle before we finally do it. So what we did was make sure we had it all the nuances of version 1.6, or I guess 1.7, whichever's the latest one out. And so we want to make sure we had that ready to go. So then the migration from 1.6 to 1.7 to version 2 should be a little easier for the user. And that's part of what we're trying to do with that. So I think you'll like the changes. I must say most of those changes really, to me, are cosmetic. All the information content was always there. It's just it wasn't shown in perhaps the exact way other tools show it. And so that's why we went ahead and updated those. And last but not least, in the new stuff is a new change request capability. So now if you're in a review and you're a reviewer, you can just make a request for change, and then the owner of the project can accept the change or not. And it's always the or not part that people go, huh? Okay, so let's go see some of these things. It's, you know, it's all great words and all that kind of stuff, but let's go through and talk a little bit more about that. And by the way, I'm going to focus on the 4.7 changes right now. But if you have questions about the other material, please ask questions. Okay, so first of all, well, actually, I'll show you the dashboard here since it's the first one up. This is Dr. Seller's dashboard. You can see what's here. He's got little icons for like the work breakdown structure, things like that. So rather than putting in the picture itself, which you can do, he has the work breakdown structure with a hyperlink. And in case you don't know about cloud-based tools or web-based tools, the URL there at the top that I just highlighted, that it can be used as a hyperlink to go to anything directly. So that's a great way to move to whatever you're looking at. Also notice he's got some specific documents shown down here. So you can set those up. If I had a specific diagram, you can put that in here. Particularly when I'm doing a lot of modeling work with other modelers together, we're trying to we'll put the main diagram up here on the dashboard, and that way you can quickly click to it and migrate, navigate to the other things you want to do. Here's the technical baselines as well he's got here. So this is a very elegant dashboard that's been created. So let's see, the next thing I wanted to show was the timeline diagram. So here's the new timeline diagram. You notice the scale looks very different. We have very nice grid lines set up. There is a today's date line as well. That's in the, you can hide it. It's that red line that pops up. So show current date. So you see that. There's been a number of little things that have been done in terms of making it a little easier to use the labels and things like that. So, so probably one of the big things you'll notice is over here. Before we had you just grab the individual item and move it if you're going to move it. So this little symbol, this up and down arrow, is a move button. So it lets you move it as you need to. In front of it is the level number, so you know where you are in the levels. Even though we adjusted size of text, but you only adjust it so much, the size of text. So this lets us do the numbering better and lets you see it better on the I believe now we have numbers of levels also has been increased to 10. I think previously we were constricting it to 3. So just a lot of little things that changed, but big change. It caused big changes in it in terms of being able to see the information. So let's jump into the SysML examples, I think, next. Yeah, let's do that next. Actually, no, let me, let me do that first. So here's some examples here. So here's an example of an activity diagram. You notice the swim lanes are here now. And yes, swim lanes still will automatically allocate that that object to this the performer, so to the wildfire. So that's a key part of it. Yeah, in fact, that's funny. It looks like I had one that shouldn't be on there too. So these will do that automatic allocation for you. And these are all adjustable. You can move things around as you need to make it look prettier. So again, guards have been added, swim lanes. So these are the two new things that just came in with this. Again, I don't know much about smell, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview. Let's see, what else? What other diagrams were there that they added? Again, we got the sequence diagram looking pretty nice now. It's got the little, whatever this thing is, the background available to you. So very simple diagram. What other ones are here? Use case. Of course, you still can add the system boundary if you want as well. So I'll say my system boundaries here. So, and people may or may not like that. that's what we got going with it. Let's see, what else was there? I don't think I've got any others with this one I want to show. Oh, well, so here's a requirement. Yeah, I think this is the requirements diagram. Yeah. So here's your requirements diagram. And by the way, one thing I've noticed with some of these diagrams, like the requirements diagram, if your requirements diagram, if you have a large hierarchy of these requirements, this becomes really impossible to read. So you will then want to navigate back to maybe something like a tree diagram and be able to use it instead. All the information is still there. It's just a matter of, the form. So, the whole idea of model-based systems engineering was to get us away from form and more about substance. But people still want their form. So, okay, sure. We don't care. So I think that's the last one on that particular one. Some of the physical diagrams. Again, here's an example of a block definition diagram. It goes on forever because there's a lot here. And so you can play with it to make it look more compact, but ultimately there's just too much information to try to put in this form and format. So again, hopefully you'll mix and match between the different diagram types as you need to. Just use whatever things is most appropriate and easiest to use for what you're trying to do and communicate. Here's the package diagram, another similar thing. This is basically just a hierarchy diagram. So it has the same information content in it. Everybody wanted that frame. I'm not sure why the frame was so important to everybody, but okay. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Let's see, what other ones here we got? State machine. State machine was upgraded pretty significantly. We added a lot of these other what are they called? Different things here that you can add into it and see different things. And so you can make a pretty busy diagram out of it, but it has all that available to it. We didn't go as far as full execution of this diagram. That's redundant to our current simulators. And so we think that it's a better approach to use the behavioral diagram to do your simulation off of. It has the physical constraints to it built in as well. So it actually has more than what the state machine diagram usually has in other that people usually use. So I just wanted you to be aware of that is available. All the capability you need is in the tool. Let's see. What else? We got some other items I can find here. The block diagram. Thought I had. There we go. So this is the parametric diagram. Again, that's been updated with the frame and everything. So that's kind of updated too. Again, not a huge update, but it was significant enough. Go back was, and let's go forward again. And internal block diagram. Again, very similar. We're showing more of the layers and things now, I think, than we were before. So this has the same content as our layer diagram, pretty much. The only difference is you can add ports to this and see the ports explicitly. Ports to us are a subcomponent of the object that they're associated with. So we just show them explicitly in these views for you to match the SysML standard. Let's see, I think that's most of the SysML diagrams are almost all of them. I'm not that familiar with SysML, so I'm trying to come up with what these are. I think that's all I've got for that. Okay. And then last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about this new change request feature. This is kind of neat. So you can request a change. I'm a reviewer on this particular project. As you can see, I'm just a reviewer. So I can't change it myself. But what you can do now is you can go in, and let's say you're in a document, and you want to propose a change to something like here. And I want to come in here, and I can come in, and I can click in this object. Sorry. Oh, get its entity view. You get the entity view, and then go in here and say, well, at least you add the period. Need more definition. Bold. So then I can create a change request here. That button, as soon as I start editing in there, that button pops up, and now I've made that request. And so if I go now into there and yeah, so again, if I go back to that open entity view, I can see the request was made. And I can see that again at the dashboard because there's a dashboard widget that will show that proposed change as well. So as soon as I do it. So again, that's kind of some nice new features, updates to old things, and new capabilities that you'll find, I think, within the tool to do more of what you want to do and more effectively. So I wanted to leave it open for some time for questions, because I'm sure there's lots of questions. And so do we have any questions, Taylor?
Yeah, first I want to say thanks, Dr. Dam. If you haven't already done so, please send your questions through the panel on the right. We have several already that we'll get to, and Dr. Dam will answer as many as he can before our time is up. So the first is, does the schema in Innoslate need to be edited, or can you use it out of the box?
You can use the schema out of the box. A lot of people like to edit the schema, to add at least labels and things like that, because it will help you sort information differently. And so that's really probably the biggest schema extension I see most people do. It's really not that hard. So all you do is come over to the schema editor, and then go ahead and add labels there. Again, these are any edits to the schema, including labels, are an owner privilege. So you must be the owner of the project to do this. Okay.
Great. Second question, when will 4.7 be ready for enterprise?
Well, so Enterprise, which should be 2 weeks after its the cloud release. So we're expecting the cloud release early next week. So 2 weeks after that. I forget what the date would be for that, but it would be early February.
Great. What is the learning curve in switching from other tools to Innoslate?
So we find that's pretty short. Most people, if they're comfortable with the general concepts of using databasing tools, find it fairly easy to jump into using Innoslate. And of course, it's going to be dependent more upon which tool you're coming from. Our tool is very similar to Core and Cradle. Are a couple of them. We find the Cameo folks pick it up pretty quickly. In fact, many of these universities will be introducing people to Cameo first, and then they get Innoslate and they're, oh, this is much easier. So at least that's the feedback we've gotten from many people. So I think you find that it's pretty quick. I know we had one student come in and she in 6 weeks was demoing it at an NCOSI event. So that was a very good student, but still she hadn't really done a lot of modeling work before and felt that comfortable with the tool. And if anybody's been to an NCOSI event, and NCOSI International Symposium, you know you get some pretty tough questions coming at you.
How do you do a database entity relationship diagram showing foreign keys, primary keys, etc., and cardinality of entity relationships?
Okay. Okay, that's probably best done in the class diagram. And again, that's one of our diagrams we have that's available. I think let's see if it's in here or here. Let me just see if I've got an example for you. Nope, not in that one. Let's see if we got one in here. Don't use a lot. That's the problem here. Let's try this one. Diagrams. Show all diagrams. Class diagram. Nope, sorry. Again, I'm not using them right now, so I don't have a good example to show you. Let's see. Do I have another one over here, maybe? Sorry, I've got lots of these different ones. And second. By the way, on the new version, we do have two-step authorization as well. So if you do timeout, you will have to go use Google Authenticator on the cloud. For the enterprise version, I think we toggle that off because usually people who are using it there don't have that option. So let's see if I can get to the one I wanted to get to here, class diagrams. There we go. So here's your example of using the different entities, and the cardinality is here, showing that information. The one-to-one, one-to-many kind of thing can be put into here. This shows attributes and operations. Again, very similar kind of thing. Now I'm on the old version, by the way, so this doesn't have that all that nice stuff that's in the new version. So I was hoping it would be in here too, but I guess I didn't put it in there yet. This also kind of doubles as an ND relationship attribute and attribute on relationship diagram, so you can easily set up the information that way. Again, it adds this interface thing, so it's okay. Any other questions?
That looks like it's it for now. We would like to thank you again for joining us today. As a reminder, we'll be following up with you very soon, send you a link to the recording and the presentation slide deck. We hope you can join us for our next webinar, Manage Mission Critical Requirements through Agile and Innoslate, on February 22nd at 11 a.m. Eastern. If you can't join us live, be sure to register to receive the slides and recording. We also encourage you to visit our website and our blog, as well as connect with us on social media. That concludes today's presentation. Have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.